The FCC readies a vote on banning new Huawei and ZTE devices. Huawei is a Chinese phone manufacturer, I believe. Aaron, what are your thoughts?
Overall, it's like Huawei's not even a big phone here in America right now.
Yeah.
I only know one person in my life who has it. It's my uncle. But like besides that, it's like I don't know anybody with a Huawei phone.
I think it's interesting that like the United States can tell Asians apart in that sense. Like, oh, we hate Chinese tech, but Samsung, yeah, we love them, and Sony, we love them too. Welcome to the Politically Asian Podcast. We're just two Asian American comedians talking about politics and the Asian American community in hopes of getting more Asians to talk about politics. We are coming at you live from Brooklyn, New York. My name is Gerrie Lim. My pronouns are they, them, and you can find me across the internet at Gerriaki. That's Gerrieyaki. And my co-host,
Hey, my name is Aaron Yin. My pronouns are he, him, and you can find me on social media at Aaron Flarin. That's AARON FLARIN.
All right, so we're going to start this week's episode with our Practice What You Preach segment. On the pod, we talk a lot about politics, but it's also important to do things. So each week we share one thing we did related to politics and organizing, just being out in the world in real life. I'll go first this week, and I was going to talk about DSA again, but this was so much better. I went on Michael Salgarolo's Blood and Water tour. Michael is a friend to us. He's a comedian and historian. He just recently got his history PhD. Yay, Michael.
Yay.
And his Blood and Water tour it covers Filipino-American history on the Brooklyn Bridge waterfront, which is pretty interesting because I thought our history was pretty much confined to Queens and Flushing, Woodside, all that. I just thought we would be there, and it was really surprising to hear how we have a history across the waterfront that started pretty much as soon as the United States conquered the Philippines. It was really well done. And yeah, I highly recommend when he puts out the next tour dates to check it out.
Nice. How many locations did you all go to overall? Was it just that one place in Brooklyn?
Yeah, so it's just on the Brooklyn Bridge waterfront, like in the park. And a lot of the places aren't there anymore. So, he talks a lot about using our imagination and empathy and all that stuff. Yeah, but it's still really good. He does a fantastic job of just like, he also has like pictures and things like that. And yeah, he just did a really great job of, I don't know, like I typically hated history classes, but I guess it's different to learn about your own history through a fellow Filipino,
Mm-hmm. Okay, he also is a comedian. Was it funny?
It was. I don't want to spoil anything because I want people to go on the tour for themselves, but I've always loved Michael's stand-up, and he also does some killer impressions. Ask him to do an Obama impression, he'll kill it. Yeah, it was pretty good. I feel like I would have done a lot better in school if Michael had been like one of my teachers.
Yeah. I remember when I saw his stand-up a while ago, he also had a Jerry Seinfeld impression.
Yeah.
What's the deal with you? That's cool. Okay, what's one thing that you took away from this tour?
It was really interesting to hear about Filipino-American history from the early 1900s and hear that they were leftist, socialist, communist, anti-imperialist, because I feel like, we have those groups today, but sometimes this is really bad of me, but I feel sometimes that when I think about leftist politics, I feel like sometimes they can lean very young people-y, that this is like a new phenomenon and stuff like that. But it was really good and important to hear that, oh no, this has been around for a while, and they were also capable of organizing over labor, since a lot of them were sailors and worked on boats and stuff like that. So yeah, and this is early 1900s. So it was just really, really, I think it was a good reminder for me personally to remember you're not that special.
Yeah. I mean, we talk a lot about the Delano grape strikes, right? Which
That too.
Was 1960s-ish, but still Filipino led. Very cool. Nice.
Yeah.
Um, That's very fun. And I guess to wrap things up, what account do they follow or should they follow for the next walking tour?
Okay. You can find Michael on Instagram at msalgarolo. That's MSALGAROLO. And you can find his tours at Blood and Water BK on Instagram. So
Nice.
yeah.
At first, I was wondering why blood was in there, but I'm like, okay. Then you kind of explained it a little bit. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
A lot of people coming to New York. Okay. Depressing.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
It's history, man. It's history.
Yeah,
He also had pictures of like happy Filipinos. So
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
I just feel like a lot
Yeah.
of like pictures, like olden pictures, always have people just like super serious.
Yeah.
Like smiling is a recent phenomenon.
Yeah.
Yeah. What were you up to this week?
So this past week, I helped lead a meeting with Youth Against Displacement, the group I'm involved with organizing around Lower East Side in Chinatown. And we just haven't had a meeting in about like 1.5 to 2 months. So it was about time to reconvene as like all 20 of us to give updates on so many different things that are happening, whether in Two Bridges, with the big towers, with the Mocha picket line, with KV, another housing complex in Lower East Side. There's just so many individual things going on top of a larger Chinatown working group rezoning plan. Just so much happening. It was about time we all sat together again and just gave each other the summaries and downloads and updates and talked about how to move forward.
So listening to you talk about the way y'all organize, it sounds like you kind of break off into your smaller groups that aren't necessarily like formal or strict or whatever, and then do your own kind of thing and then come back together and report on it. Is that kind of correct?
Yeah, I mean, we post all the updates in Signal, so I had a loose idea about what people are doing, in different parts, but sometimes it's like there are too many updates in Signal. It's like I'm not exactly following. So we all had about, let's say an 80% knowledge about what was happening, but it was good to just clarify and make sure we're on the same page, especially for some people who may have been out of town or something, to just sit down and let's just make sure everyone's 100% up to date. Yeah,
I think it's always good to have like a good in-person session because digital can only take you so far, I think.
Yeah. But it's good. It was much needed. I need to send out an email after this, but I was so glad that we finally met because we've had all these, small one-on-one conversations or group conversations here and there, but it was a much-needed meeting.
Do you ever, in these meetings, do you ever, do you guys talk about what happens next, or do you, share ideas on what others can do pertaining to their projects or, where they need help, what kind of, happens in them?
Oh, yeah. That's so, for example, let's take Mocha picket line, for example, right? So the
Sure.
Museum of Chinese in America, they're actually changing their schedule. So they're only open on Saturdays now. So only one day a week, right? And so at this meeting, for example, we talked about our new strategy now we're having picket lines at other places that Jonathan Chu owns, for example. So setting up a schedule for that. And there are a few people who volunteer to kind of lead that charge. And then it's how do we bring other people in? So yeah, definitely what you mentioned before, but just, it's getting everyone on the same page, talking about changes, and then how to get people involved.
Will you picket on Saturdays now instead of Sundays?
Me personally, or
no, the group.
No. Oh yeah, the group, we always used to picket on Saturdays as well, but there just weren't as many people because Sunday was a more popular day. But on Saturdays, it just may be more popular. But on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, there's more evening pickets around Jonathan Chu owns so many restaurants in Chinatown. So
yeah,
we'll see how many people show up each night.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah.
All right. That was our Practice What You Preach segment. Let's get into the news. So this week in Asian American politics, first headline, Trump gets subpoenaed by the January 6th committee. I'm sure many Asian Americans have, I don't know how to say it, Trump supporters and Trump supporting families, and the whole election ordeal, and Trump was a big source of frustration and division, and this is kind of getting into the final rounds of this. So Trump's finally getting called on this committee. He has to show up in court to testify, essentially. Gerrie, what is one thought you had about this?
I feel like nothing is going to happen to him.
No.
Like, he has plot armor.
Okay, yes, I definitely understand that. I mean, maybe, right? I was going to say Steve Bannon, who was, one of Trump's, I guess, right hand BFFs,
something.
right? So he was actually subpoenaed too, and now he's in jail, I think, for at least a month or two while his full hearings go on.
Okay.
But it's hard, right? Because this, it seems like Trump is bulletproof, but also this is the first time he's been subpoenaed, I think, by a federal court like this. On top of the other thing with the FBI documents, I'm more optimistic that something will happen.
What makes you so optimistic? Because I just want to say, leading up to the 2020 election, 2020? No, sorry, 2016. Whew. All right. Leading up to the 2016 election, I feel like all the outlets were like, oh my God, like Trump is president. Like, that's never going to happen. That's ridiculous. No, America would never. And then it happened, like it was to like prove a point. And so I feel like we're still at square one where it's like, he's going to go to jail. He's going to go to prisons. Justice will be served. And then, nothing's going to happen. I'm telling you, the dude has plot armor. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But, like Jon Snow should have stayed dead in Game of Thrones. But I feel like Trump has like same level of plot armor as he did.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think one difference is that this committee, which was put together after January 6th, has been releasing more documents and videos about what Trump was doing and what other aides were doing at the time of. So at least on the evidence side, it's juicier than ever. Like, this is stuff that we didn't have. Like, for example, on January 6th, I think we were just watching it happen on Twitter. And we were just tweeting our way through it. But now, on the flip side, they've had 10 hearings. So this was the 10th and final one before midterms, where they've just been releasing video after video of what every single congressperson was doing inside, including what Trump's aides were saying. They were like, oh, we got the base all riled up. It's time to go. It just like tons of incredibly, I think, incriminating things. We won't know for sure. So what happens next is that the House of Representatives, which is currently controlled by the Democrats, they're going to vote to hold him like in contempt. And if that happens, then they can, the Justice Department can start prosecuting. And then if the prosecution happens, then he can go to jail.
I swear to God, if the Democrats do not get their shit together and get this right, like the one thing they can do is like, I feel like is like organize around Trump. Like that's like their, like when Joe Biden was being elected in the 2020 election, like his entire campaign was, I'm not Trump. That's it. Yeah. That's it. No policy, no platform, just I'm not Trump. And people were like, yeah, you know what? We can get around. So like, this is like the one thing the Democrats can do. Barely, like the one thing they kind of can do is like organize against him, I guess. I
mean, yeah, Joe Biden's like, I'm not Trump, I'm Diet Trump. There's a difference.
Right, exactly.
But also, I think it's important to clarify, the January 6th committee is not just Democrats. It's pretty bipartisan. I think the lead of the committee is Dick Cheney's daughter, Liz Cheney. So I think a lot of Republicans are also on board with this. And obviously there's fractions between which Republicans are still extremely pro-Trump and which ones are calling him out so that they have a chance for election in the future. But yeah, I mean, I'm more optimistic about this.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
We'll see.
All right.
Yeah.
Is this something we can place bets on, or is that legal?
Yeah. This will be this week's questionnaire again about Trump. I think we had one before, but we'll show it again. It's like, who thinks Trump will be sent to prison for any amount of time?
Okay.
I think it's the bet. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah.
I was gonna say, okay, I will give you some optimism points, because I think like my frame of reference for any hearing is typically like tech or like something in that area happening. And I feel like here there's not really anything that like old crunchy, grandpas can fuck up in terms of like technology, right? Like this was pretty like cut and dry, like, if anything, they planned this by phones, like phone calls, not like sending encrypted emails over whatever, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, well, part of me is like, we even have video of, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer talking with Mike Pence. Like, they're all coordinating safety stuff. And I'm like, I don't know. I think there are just so many things going on that show that this was a Trump infused, empowered crowd, and I'm like, you have so much evidence. There's so many videos. Like, I feel like everything's being handed to you on a silver platter. Like this is like Beijing duck, right? And there's like it's just I actually don't even know what that meant, but it's just good looking evidence. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Like, how on earth can we fumble this?
I mean, all right. Well, we'll see. We'll keep an eye out.
Yeah. And something else that we shared was some testimony from fellow Trump officials who had resigned at the time of January 6th. And, our go-to, one of our only Asian reps back in Trump's time, Elaine Chao, had also resigned right after that day. Gerrie, what are your thoughts on Elaine Chao?
I hate that, like, I hate that this was like the week where I learned stuff about Elaine Chao. You know what I mean? Like, I think I could have lived the rest of my life not knowing a single fact about her. Like, I found out she was the Secretary of Labor under Bush, and I was like, whoa, she's been here twice?
Yeah.
Did not know that. Yeah, I completely forgot. Yeah, what did you think about all this?
Yeah, I mean, the key article that we shared was, it was titled, Elaine Chao Reveals Why She Resigned from Trump's Cabinet. And this is part of her 40-second testimony where she was just saying, I came as an immigrant to this country. I believe in democracy. So this was the decision I made on my own to step down.
It's always confusing what the American definition of democracy, because, like, if you think about it, these people were writing. I do not condone this at all. But, like, in a way, like, that was kind of what was happening back in, like, 1776 or whatever, right? Like, more or less, this was in a way kind of that, just in a different font, no?
Yeah. The riots and rebellions, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, no, for sure. Every single Trump protester was like, this is what our country was founded on, protesting and coups and overtaking the Capitol, right?
Yeah. And I don't like it when people say, like, oh, I believe in America, but then, like, America is literally presenting itself to you and you still can't believe it,
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, wake up.
Yeah. The funniest line was she was like, it was this moment. It was impossible for me to continue. And I'm like, there are so many things that Trump did, but to list a few off, it's like the China initiative, all those anti-vax policies, border walls, every single anti-climate change thing, revoking DACA, every single thing that was like anti-immigrant. And I'm like, this is the final thing that caused you to wake up.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. That's why I find the as an immigrant line so funny. It's like, where were you for all of these other cases? Yeah.
She just, I mean, woke up lucky, you know what I mean? Like, she was just lucky to not be an immigrant that was actually impacted by this. I think it's because she comes from money. Like, her,
yeah.
I was like reading about this, and her dad is like a bajillionaire or something like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
This is barely related, but her new nickname is Coco Chow. That's Trump's new nickname for her.
Where did the cocoa come from?
No idea. It sounds like a cereal, but he's been posting rants about her on Truth Social, which is Trump's social media. Mitch McConnell and his China-loving wife, Coco Chow. I don't even know what it means. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. I always forget she's married to Mitch McConnell. Like, I know that's like the number one. I feel like that's the first thing everyone thinks of.
Yeah.
I try not to think about it. The ultimate white man, Asian woman couple.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, well, moving on to our second item. The FCC readies a vote on banning new Huawei and ZTE devices. Huawei is a Chinese phone manufacturer, I believe. Aaron, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, also FCC, Federal Communications Commission. I mean, I'll speak personally first that I do have relatives who use Huawei phones. I mean, objectively speaking, this is not objective at all. What am I saying? I think the phones look cool. They're the ones that like flip open and have dual screens, and then when you link them together, you can, the content kind of goes across screens. So from a tech point of view, like they look cool. But I mean, I don't know. It feels a lot like discussions around TikTok, and TikTok being a Chinese app, and it's super risky. And they're saying, oh, these phones also are data gathering devices. My only thought is like the people buying Huawei phones are not going to be the people with really important data, like US officials. So I feel like, who are they stealing info from? Like, it's going to be Joe Schmoes who have nothing valuable.
That's a really good point. I didn't even think about that, because like if they should be looking at anyone, then I mean, doesn't Apple like get their parts or something from China or something like that? Or they assemble them in China?
Yeah.
Okay. Like,
That always confuses me. I'm like, overall, it's like Huawei's not even a big phone here in America right now.
Yeah.
I only know one person in my life who has it. It's my uncle. But like besides that, it's like I don't know anybody with a Huawei phone.
wait, so I was under the impression that Huawei phones don't work in America. So your uncle can use his phone here?
Oh, they do. Yeah. I mean, it's a Huawei phone, but it uses Android as the software.
Okay, that makes a little bit more sense because I also have family that use Huawei phones in the Philippines. I remember.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I remember a couple years ago when I went, one of my aunts had a Huawei phone and the camera was like really, really good. Like it was like better than like the iPhone camera at the time. And my mom was like, "Oh, I want that phone because I want a phone for the camera." Yeah. And my aunt was like, "Well, it's a Huawei, so it's not going to work in America." But I think maybe the operating system was Huawei, and it sounds like it might brick here in the US. Yeah, I think it's interesting that like the United States can tell Asians apart in that sense. Like, oh, we hate Chinese tech, but Samsung, we love them, and Sony, we love them too. Hey, thanks for listening to the episode so far. If you like it, maybe pause right here and give us 5 stars on either Apple or Spotify. It really helps the pod out, and it's free. But if you have some money to toss our way, consider subscribing to our Patreon. We're currently fundraising to get transcripts for our podcast episodes to make them more accessible, hire a video editor, and hopefully get Canva Premium to deliver better memes. So yeah, thanks for listening, and now back to the episode.
All right, and the next piece of news we're going to Seattle again. So I think a few weeks ago, Gerrie and I talked about a shelter in Seattle, or an expansion to a shelter in Seattle in the Chinatown International District. But yeah, recently there was an update. So Kings County actually scrapped the plan to expand the homeless services hub. Gerrie, what is one thought you had about this?
I don't know if I said this last time, but why not just use the funds to fully like resettle and house unhoused folks? You know what I mean? It'll be less a smaller number of people you can support, but if you support them significantly more fully, then like you're net gain, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I was reading this thing. So Seattle's big thing right now that they have is called Partnership for Zero, where they just want zero unhoused people. According to the Homelessness Authority, they say there's 800 to 1,000 people unhoused in the downtown area, which doesn't sound like a lot, right? It's like can we not jump up the money to make like some permanent housing for 800 to 1,000 people?
Yeah.
Like one thing that I'm not sure if we clarified last time, but it's like this is just an expansion to the shelter. So there's already a shelter there run by the Salvation Army, and it has 270 people, and Kings County was trying to use all the money they got from Joe Biden and the American Rescue Plan to just expand that 270 to 419 beds. So there's no like permanent housing. It's mainly just increasing shelter beds, which I feel like, okay, it's like Band-Aid on the...
On a Band-Aid.
Yeah, Band-Aid on a Band-Aid, yeah. Yeah.
Like you have a deep cut, and instead of just like, maybe getting stitches or you put another Band-Aid because the first Band-Aid is like soaked through with blood. Like,
yes. Yeah. I mean, I think I shared this link with you. It was on Google Earth. Like when you look on Google Earth for Seattle's like Chinatown District and right south, the existing encampment is already so large. It's like this huge empty parking lot with a lot of tents, like tent cities, just like we have in New York City sometimes, or in LA, right? So, I mean, I guess it's like everyone gets a slightly better building, but yeah, they still don't have, more permanent housing.
Interesting. And they were going to expand that? How are they going to expand that? Like, where was it going to go? There's a highway there.
Oh, yeah, I think...
Upwards?
Yeah, it could be upwards, or I mean, part of the whole lot is just a lot of tents, right? So it's like, I guess, replacing the tent area with more actual buildings. Yeah, one thing I didn't realize is that many buildings in Seattle are pretty short. That's, I'm like, I didn't realize that before looking at like a 3D model of Seattle.
I feel like that's the case for most cities. New York,
Yeah,
New York is definitely an
besides New York,
outlier.
Exactly.
Brainworms. I feel like a month is objectively not a long time. And I wanted to ask you about this because the protests for Mocha you've been involved with them for quite some time. And I feel like they've been going on longer than that, no?
Yeah, 1 month is a really short amount of time. I think the shelter in Seattle is better if it's compared to a similar shelter in Chinatown, New York City that was on Grand Street. So this Grand Street one was also proposed, and in about like 2 months, the project was also canceled. I think in part to a lot of protests in Chinatown around the shelter, because this was around the time that Christina Yuna Lee was murdered, and so I was like, no, we don't want any kind of shelter anywhere near Chinatown. And then also there were a lot of hotel groups who didn't want the hotel to be converted to a shelter because they still wanted to bring the hotel back. But I think in terms of a shelter protest, at least, it seems these timelines are much shorter, like 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, which hopefully doesn't give people a false sense of victory about how easy or hard some things are. Yeah, because like this jail project, right? And with, Mocha getting a lot of money for the Chinatown jail, it's like this is an $8 billion project, so I don't think it's gonna be as easily stopped as like a much smaller shelter.
Yeah, I was gonna say I feel like it has something to do, and that's a good point to compare it to a New York shelter project here as opposed to the jails that the Mocha protests are about. Because like when you think about the homeless shelters, if people don't build them, like nothing really happens. You know what I mean? Like homeless folks will continue to be unhoused. But if they don't build prisons, how will they continue to incarcerate people?
Yeah,
how will they,
exactly.
how will they continue the prison industrial complex?
Yeah. I think it's a huge thing with size, right? Like these new prisons holding like thousands of people, but like these shelters, the Grand Street one, it only has 94 beds. The Seattle one, is just an expansion of adding 100 new beds, so much smaller in size and scale. And even for the Seattle one, they're just saying, yeah, we'll just put the money to address, homelessness in some other aspect. It seems like something that's easier to do on the government side, and it seems to make the community feel more motivated for organizing.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's always good to just hear these kinds of stories, though, just to know, like, yeah, this stuff works.
Yeah, sort of, yeah. We'll see how it goes. Yeah, but like you were saying earlier, I hope that this money is used more for permanent housing, because in the downtown area, they have a very small number, 800 to 1,000. But overall in Kings County, like that larger, district of Seattle, in downtown Seattle, they have estimates of around like 13,000 to upwards of 40,000 people who are unhoused. It's a pretty wide range too, depending on how you're counting. So that puts things into perspective more as like, yeah, this is a lot of people.
Yeah.
yeah. That's all I got. It's a lot of people, and it's like we need more money to provide permanent housing, because this number has just been going up every single year.
Yeah, permanent housing, and then like the resources to sustain someone, like to get back on their feet. I think. Yeah, I think it's just still always so sad where the money goes, like prisons over homeless shelters or unhoused services. This is disappointing. But anyway, moving on to our next topic on the docket. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this. There's, according to the FDA, there is an official Adderall shortage. I thought this has been the case, but, the FDA put out their statement officially this week. Aaron, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, personally, I do not take Adderall, so I guess I feel like I have slightly fewer stakes in this, but I was Googling a lot of research, and it's like, it's kind of funny how the FDA finally has announced this statement, because there have been articles about this going back to, I guess, late July, early August, talking about this shortage. And I just feel like many, many articles talking about the shortage, but being more reassuring. And then now it's October, and it's like, yeah, we're actually kind of fucked until next year, anywhere between January and March 2023 with this shortage. So everyone buckle up. So just some... I think denial about how bad a health crisis is a consistent theme in America.
Yeah. I don't understand what's specifically happening in next year in January and March that will make this better? Like, are the Adderall trees gonna sprout? Like, what's happening? What are we waiting for, guys?
Oh, we gotta harvest it from the ground.
Yeah, like what? Is the crop ready? I'm confused. Yeah, like I said, like I was kind of surprised that the FDA is just kind of now getting around to this, because for those of you who don't know, I take Adderall. I take 5 milligrams, just a measly 5 milligrams extended release. And I mean, like I recently had my own discovery that the generic doesn't work for me as well as the brand name. So, Aaron, we were texting about like one of the manufacturers, Teva. And apparently Teva makes both generic and brand name, but they're more well known, I think, for the generic. And I have been on the generic for the past 6 months, and it has sucked. So, like, I genuinely thought, I was like, wow, like, I might have to up my dosage again, or not again, but like, I might have to up my dosage or switch medications or something, because this does not give me joy. This does not inspire happiness in me like it used to. Whatever Marie Kondo used to say. Yeah, Teva having production delays is actually the whole reason for this, because I didn't know this until researching this, but Teva, it's an Israeli company, and they're the company that produces the most Adderall for America. There's like over a third is just by this one company. I was like, holy shit, I had no idea that they were doing this. And they said it was because of a labor shortage. And when I hear the word labor shortage, I instantly think you're actually not treating workers well. Exactly.
Which is why there's a labor shortage. And when you Google Teva labor shortage, there's nothing recent. There are a lot of articles in 2017 about worker strikes at Teva. So really bad conditions there. But they have been doing a lot of layoffs recently. So part of me was like, okay, well, if you're laying off a whole bunch of people, of course you're going to be behind on your productions.
Yeah, you sent me that article, and I like started to panic, because I was like, oh no, I don't want my brain drugs manufactured by Zionists. So I like looked it up who my manufacturer was, and it's actually owned by Shire, or it's manufactured by Shire, who is owned by Takeda, which is a Japanese company, because I prefer my imperialists Asian. And,
I was like, wow, the world Adderall market is so interesting. But yeah, I mean, Teva, after doing this initial Teva research, I guess another reason to not support them now is because they've been sued almost 3,000 times. 3000 by different local and state governments for downplaying the addiction risk of opioids. America, another thing that we're very known for now is our rising opioid epidemic. Mostly like fentanyl overdoses, right? Like I feel like I read an article about a celebrity dying from fentanyl every day, and that's also like the number one leading cause of death for young people. Mm-hmm. And yeah, they basically settled a lawsuit, and like in tech, these lawsuits settle for very little amounts of money. They only had to pay $4 billion in the end, which I feel like is crumbs compared to how big they are.
Yeah. You said very little amounts of money, and then said $4 billion, which you're right. In the big span of things, that's a crumbs to them, but like still to like people like you and me, Aaron. It's a lot. Yeah. 4 billion's half like the population of Earth. You know what I mean?
$4 billion, but. Yeah, Teva as a company, I'm just looking this up real quick. Their market value is about... Oh, shit. Okay, I take that back. I'm confused about how it works, because Teva is a publicly traded company, and their market cap is $9 billion.
Okay.
That's like about half of what... Okay, that sounds fair. I don't know. That sounds promising.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, speaking of bad news bears companies, so a lot of like articles that I was reading about this kind of pointed to the rise in like mental health startups, especially over the pandemic. And there was one called Cerebral. I'm not sure if you've heard of them. I've heard of them because I got targeted ads. And it's a startup that was known for prescribing ADHD medication. So Adderall, Vyvanse, all that stuff, Ritalin. And it's important to note that in a health tech company, a chief medical officer is a very important person, because everyone else is just like, oh, we just went to, we just have an MBA. We don't know anything about the human body, but we think we can fix healthcare. Oh, yeah. And that was not the case here at Cerebral. they had an Asian CMO. His name was David Mou, and their CEO was ousted, and now David he went from being their chief medical officer / doctor to their CEO. And it's just really interesting because Cerebral is being investigated by, I forget which government agency, probably all of them, because they had like some really sketchy prescribing practices and that kind of thing, since ADHD medication is a controlled substance and you're not supposed to pass it out like candy, but they are being pointed to as one of, like how we were just talking about opioids. It's kind of like that. They're being like pointed to as like, wow, there's a big spike in people who have ADHD, and it's all leading to people like Cerebral.
Oh, okay, yes. Asian CEO villains.
Let's go.
Let's go. Yeah.
I think they went under something. I think if I remember correctly, they're not prescribing to new patients or something like that. Okay, nice. Yeah, I'm looking it up. They don't offer controlled substances anymore.
Oh shit, okay. That's how you know they were fucking up.
Yeah. When your entire initial product, your main product, has to shift dramatically.
Yeah. Wow, really capitalizing on Asians and mental health. I mean,
exactly.
Yeah. All right. And our last piece of news for this week, we are going to New York City. We read this article titled "How Delivery Workers Won Their First Charging Hub." So a summary is, in New York City, there are a lot of deliveristas. I would always recommend checking out Los Deliveristas Unidos on Twitter. And over the pandemic, they lost a bunch of spots where they could just park their bikes and rest for a little bit. And this, I guess it's good news, even if it's marginal good news. They have their first charging hub. So it's just a place where they can rest and relax and charge their bikes and shelter. Gerrie, what is one thought you had about this?
The bar is really on the ground. I was reading this article and it was like, yeah, so they'll have charging hubs to get them out of the rain and snow to recharge their bikes and phones. I was like, okay, so the bare minimum to make their job, less miserable. I don't know. It just seems like the bar is really on the ground, and I feel happy that they have this win, but also very sad that it's, Yeah,
I mean, and it really feels like the bar is low. So this first hub, it's going to be near City Hall, because there are so many areas in that downtown New York City region where groups of them have always been waiting already. I will say one thing that is depressing about this is that the charging hub does not have a bathroom. Right now, it's policy that restaurants should allow deliveristas to use their bathrooms, but many restaurants are not even allowing that. So it seems like this bathroom thing is still a huge issue.
Wait, I didn't realize that, because I had the same thought when I was reading this. I was like, oh, they don't have a bathroom. I kind of saw it as a good thing, because it's like, oh, they don't have to maintain a bathroom. They don't have to put plumbing in it, blah, blah, blah. It might be less upkeep. But then I was like, okay, well, where do they pee? And I've found that they passed a law, city council, whatever, that gave them the right to pee, poop in the restaurants they deliver from. But that didn't pass until very recently, January of this year.
Yeah. Or it says 2021, but yeah, in that same article, it's not all restaurants are complying, and I guess it doesn't seem like there's penalties or huge slaps on the wrist. Maybe there's I don't know, civil rights lawsuits, but you know how long those take. Yeah. So I'm like, damn, this shit sucks. This is like Amazon shit. I'm like, no bathrooms, hold it. I'm like, this is so bad.
Yeah, I think the other thing to talk about Los Deliveristas Unidos, it's more. This is kind of what you're talking about when you say workers collective, right? Because it's not like they're unionized workers all at one company. They're more all the same type of worker. Yeah. And I mean, these charging hubs could be a good place for them to really have a physical location to congregate.
Yeah, I mean, they're still kind of concentrated among one industry. I feel like one thing with worker centers is that you start going across industry. So, for example, it might be Uber drivers, right? You're driving and doing things with delivery workers with something. But yeah, I mean, it's so cool to see all of them together, not split into factions you're a DoorDash deliverer, you're a Seamless deliverer.
Well, that's because I've read about them that they'll drive or deliver for multiple at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, that's it for this week. We hope you enjoyed the episode. Again, you can follow the podcast at Politically Asian Podcast on Instagram. at politicasianpod on Twitter, or email us at politicallyasianpodcast@gmail.com. If you really want to help us out, please, please, please leave an Apple or Spotify review. 5 stars. It's free. It takes 5 seconds. Cool. Thanks for listening, and bye.